In the thriving city of Charleston, South Carolina, there lived a successful merchant named Ethan Bennett, known for his sharp business acumen. Ethan had worked tirelessly to build his fortune through trade, particularly in imported goods from distant lands. His wealth had brought him not only material success, but also respect among his peers. However, Ethan's ambition was insatiable. He often dreamed of expanding his empire to the point where no merchant could rival his influence. One fateful summer, Ethan prepared to send out a shipload of precious goods, luxurious silks, rare spices, and rare gemstones across the Atlantic to Europe. The shipment was meant to secure his future, cementing his legacy as one of the richest men in the country. But fate had different plans. A storm of unimaginable ferocity struck the coast. The ship, laden with Ethan's cargo, was wrecked off the shores of a distant island. The goods were lost, and with them, Ethan's dreams of further expansion. Devastated, Ethan gathered his closest confidant, his right-hand man, Michael, who had been with him since the early days of his business. "This is the worst loss I've ever faced, Michael," Ethan lamented, his voice shaking with frustration. "Everything I've built is gone in an instant. How could this happen?" Michael, though equally dismayed, tried to comfort his friend. "Ethan, I know it seems impossible to see it now, but sometimes things that seem like a curse can be a blessing in disguise. Maybe it sets for the best." Ethan shook his head in disbelief. "A blessing? How could this be for the best? My entire future was tied to that shipment." But Michael, who was deeply spiritual, had heard similar wisdom from a mentor. "I know it sets hard to see now, but sometimes life has a way of leading us down unexpected paths. I believe what happens for a reason, even if we don't understand it right away." Ethan, frustrated and in no mood for philosophical musings, ordered that Michael find out exactly what had happened to the shipment and find a way to recover the goods. The days that followed were full of tension and anger. Ethan threw himself into frantic efforts to track down the missing cargo, but there was no sign of it. As the weeks passed, the weight of his loss began to take its toll. His wealth was now far more limited, and his reputation began to suffer. Then, one morning, Michael returned with startling news. A rival merchant, Jonathan West, had gotten wind of the shipwreck and was preparing to seize the remaining cargo from the island's shores. Jonathan had long been an adversary, a man who had never shied away from exploiting the misfortunes of others for his own gain. This news only deepened Ethan's bitterness. He knew that if Jonathan succeeded, his rival would profit from his misfortune, further increasing his own wealth and influence. But just as Ethan prepared to set off to stop Jonathan's expedition, he received a letter from an unexpected source, Governor Lawrence of South Carolina. The letter was formal but urgent. It turned out that the storm that had wrecked Ethan's ship had left behind a trail of destruction. A large portion of the coast had been washed away, and with it, several smugglers' dens had been exposed, revealing illegal activities that had been operating under the radar for years. Governor Lawrence requested Ethan's assistance in handling the situation, offering him a lucrative contract to help the state recover stolen goods, some of which were suspected to have come from his very own cargo. Suddenly, Ethan's situation took a dramatic turn. The smugglers, it turned out, had been working with none other than Jonathan West, who had been illegally redirecting shipments meant for legitimate traders like Ethan. The very loss that had seemed like the end of Ethan's business now presented him with an opportunity to strike back and reclaim his fortune, this time with the law on his side. In exchange for his help, the governor offered Ethan a new position as an official trade advisor to the state, making him a key figure in regulating future shipments and trade policies. This new position would grant Ethan far more influence and wealth than he had ever imagined. As he stood in front of his office window, contemplating the unexpected turn of events, Ethan Sett's thoughts drifted to Michael Sett's words. "Maybe you were right," he muttered. "Maybe this was for the best. Losing the ship, losing everything, it led me to this." Later, Ethan sought out Michael, who was quietly meditating in the garden. "I have to admit something, my friend," Ethan said, his voice filled with humility. "You were right. When the ship sank, I thought I'd lost everything. But it turns out that everything I lost was the key to everything I've gained. If I hadn't faced that disaster, I would never have uncovered Jonathan's deceit. And now, I've been offered more power than I ever dreamed of." Michael smiled serenely. "Ethan, the world works in mysterious ways. Sometimes the losses we face are just the beginning of a greater journey. Trust that life will unfold as it should, and that even in our darkest moments, something good is always waiting to be found." Ethan's eyes softened with understanding. He had come to realize that the misfortune of the shipwreck had not been an end, but the beginning of a new chapter, one that would bring him more success, influence, and satisfaction than he had ever hoped for. And so, Ethan Bennett rose not only as a wealthy merchant, but as a man who understood that sometimes the greatest blessings come from the most unexpected sources. He no longer measured success solely by material wealth, but by the wisdom to see the good in every situation.